Radio 4. It's 4:31.
Let us now praise famous men.
Mr. Holmes, we are not amused.
Thank you very much indeed, and good evening and welcome.
Quote, unquote. We present a seasonal edition of the quotation game, devised and introduced by Nigel Rees.
Hello and welcome to our annual end-of-the-year get-together in which we recall some of the sayings of the year before consigning them to the great waste paper basket of history. To help us do this, we have with us not only Ronald Fletcher to read the quotations, but also a newcomer to quote-unquote, Sue McGregor of Woman's Hour, plus three old hands at the game, Arthur Marshall, John Mortimer and Peter Cook. 2 marks each if you can recognise who uttered these odds and ends during the year. Arthur Marshall, who said, and on what occasion?
I've always enjoyed smoked trout.
This is rather a sad occasion. Somebody being unmasked, I fancy, who was given what sounded like a slap-up lunch. Whether there was anything after the smoked trout, I couldn't find out.
Well, yes, there was veal, fruit salad and wine.
What a blowout, my goodness.
Who are we referring to?
Well, I'm afraid we're referring to Professor Anthony Blunt.
Who was revealed in November as having been the fourth man in the Beverly Sisters. Do you remember... Do you know what the occasion was, Arthur? I mean, apart from him being unmasked.
It was at the Times newspaper.
Right, so. Sue McGregor, I wonder if you know who wrote this poem in 1979 and to whom he gave it.
If I suffer from eccentricity, do I have egg-centricity on my face? I may not be here tomorrow. Can I borrow all of your best wishes?
Was it the man who used to make us cringe or giggle, depending on our frame of mind, when we watched the news at 10? Was that Reggie?
Yes. No.
Bosanquet.
Yes.
Bosanquet.
Bosanquet, I think he prefers it with the T.
Yes.
To whom did he give this poem?
Well, it had to be to Anna Ford.
So they say, yes. Tearful occasion.
Dear Reggie. Still, he's going to be back in all forms and shapes and sizes in the new year, we are told.
Yes.
On the BBC. Today.
Well, we'll look forward to that. John Mortimer, who said this year and why?
We are a young married couple with a mortgage, just like everybody else.
Oh, I know exactly who that was. That was the gentleman whom, when British Leyland gave up the unequal attempt to make motor cars, went into the horse. He is that well-known jumping gentleman, Captain Mark Phillips.
Yes, indeed, justifying the equestrian sponsorship deal he entered into with British Leyland in October. And it seems that the mortgage wasn't really on the house which the Queen gave them, which cost $750,000, but on a dog kennel or stable.
On the horses, swimming pool.
Oh, yes.
Well, now, Peter, for you, by whom was this remark made this year?
The Pope's got great charisma. I'd like to sign him up.
It was the bringer of the Muppets. It was the wandering Lou Grade, was it not?
Yes, it was.
So Lou Grade. Or Lord Lou Grade, is it? Is it Lord
Grade.
Grade now?
Mm. But we're still awaiting for the Pope to appear on the Muppets.
Do you think he'd be nice up in that sort of balcony, making comments? Along with Statler and Hilton, or whatever they're called.
Now back to Arthur Marshall. Arthur, this one is a little bit difficult, but if you get stuck, I'll give you a hefty clue.
Hooray!
If you ask nicely. Who this year said...
I am not the devil incarnate.
Plenty of choice.
Well, as you say, there are so many. Gracious me. Are we in this country?
Yes, we are, I think. Yes, looking around, we are in...
Are we? Are we in London town?
No, that's 2 questions. Got 18 to go. Anona Wynne?
Is this a political figure?
No, by no stretch of the imagination. Offer it to the others?
Well, if he's not a political figure, it must be the politician, John Knott.
I'm not the devil incarnate. No, it's not John Knott.
He was the one who went round with his election campaign saying, I'm not the Conservative. Honestly, I'm not the Socialist, but nobody knew he got in.
Yeah. Oh, he went on to higher things. I'll give you a clue. Tweet.
Oh.
Tweet.
Bang.
Birds. Bang.
Tweet.
Oh, I know, the man the vicar who shot the starling. Robin Redbreast, Sparrow.
Sparrow, yes. All right, John gets it. I don't suppose you know the name of the vicar or the rector.
Reverend Starling.
But he was called. Yes, it was a birdie name,
Yeah,
wasn't it?
Robin.
Wasn't it Robin somebody?
Yes, I'll give you a mark for that. So the Reverend Robin Clark of Brant Broughton in Lincolnshire, who achieved notoriety in August when he shot dead a sparrow, which was interrupting a BBC recording of a guitar recital in his church.
The BBC
now somebody will
engineers...
pass amongst us and shoot the starlings in the studio here now.
I think the BBC engineers assured the public in general that they don't normally go about shooting birds that
no
tweet
BBC engineer would
recordings.
shoot sparrows. Yes.
I was told that actually the sparrow was a suicidal sparrow in any case. It was about to hurl itself from the rafters. It was a cry for help, really, and the vicar put it out of his agony as having some problems around.
Yes, I think so. Sue McGregor, who said to whom and on what occasion this year?
God will not forgive us if we fail.
Goodness me.
Peculiar circumstances, or unlikely
God will not
circumstances
forgive
in
us.
which to hear that sentiment expressed.
It sounds like the sort of thing Frankenstein might have said as he put his monster together, but no. Was it President Carter?
Well, he was involved in this. He didn't actually say this.
Frankenstein or President?
President Carter was involved in making something with the somebody who made this remark, and they did it in...
Was it a sprinkling of salt, perhaps? Salt too?
Yes.
3?
Oh, yes.
Could it have been?
Very good.
You're giving me the subtle hints now. Yes, salt too. Who said it then?
If it wasn't Carter, it was Brezhnev.
Yes, President Brezhnev said this to President Carter at the signing of SALT II in Vienna. God will not forgive us if we fail.
And God hasn't said anything yet.
No.
Yes.
John Mortimer, here's a curious simile. Who penned it and what was he talking about?
Our position is like that of a man at the end of a windswept pier in some cold and out-of-season resort. We are confronted with a set of 7 rusty and ancient fruit machines. To reach agreement, we have to line up 3 strawberries on each of the fruit machines at the same time.
Well, I would think that the strawberries might be called Mr. Mugabe and Mr. Nkomo.
No.
People like that.
No way.
No way.
No way.
Well, then I've got not the faintest idea.
Well, it was another mighty negotiation which rumbled on in this country this year. Peter?
Oh, I think the 7 rusty fruit machines are our colleagues in the EEC.
No.
And, oh, yes, I'm just telling you what I think. I'm not telling you what the answer is.
No.
It's not the Leyland affair.
Not Leyland. There's one more big thing which was resolved.
Times.
The Times, too, yes. This was...
What's that got to do with the rusty fruit machine?
Well, you may well ask.
Yes.
It was the somewhat unlikely description by William Rees Mogg of the position of the Times in March while it was still not appearing and negotiations were still going on, like that of a man at the end of a windswept pier in some cold and out-of-season resort. I'm sure that William Rees Mogg has never even seen a fruit machine.
Who is the windswept pier?
Lord Chalfont.
Lord Chalfont.
Buffon Pier.
Finally, in this round, Peter Cook, I'm not asking you to identify a quotation, I'm asking you to supply the wording of a widely exposed message. For many weeks this autumn, with occasional variations, what was the apology caption which appeared on ITV screens? Can you remember the wording?
In its entirety?
Well, give us as much as you can.
Well, I only read it for about 16 weeks. Due to everything starts, if nothing is happening, it always starts, due to industrial action, We regret that there is this message on your screen and that you are stupid enough to read it and have read so far as this without realising this is all you'll see for weeks and weeks and weeks, and yet you continue to read this message. I really do not understand the state of mind a person like you can be in. Parents before their television sets reading this sentence on and on and on. This sentence written by Perkins.
Well, you certainly get your 2 marks, Peter.
They sat and stared at it because the music was so lovely.
That's right.
It had the best music imaginable.
And it was live.
Yeah.
There was that sense of danger. At any moment, a filthy word might slip in.
Well, I will give you what the caption said. You got your marks, Peter, for that wonderful piece of invention. It said, independent television. Because of the present industrial dispute, we are sorry that there will be no more programs on this channel today. We will give you more information when we can. Well, now, looking at the score at this point, I can tell you that Arthur Marshall has 2, John Mortimer has 3, Peter Cook has 4, and Sue McGregor has 6. We've been gratified during the year to receive so many letters from quote-unquote listeners, even when the programme's not been on the air. First, a couple of seasonal eavesdroppings. Richard H. Davis of London E13 recalls a Christmas a year or 2 ago when he was on top of a bus outside Selfridges, where giant Christmas cards depicting biblical scenes were being used as the background to a window display. Mr. Davis heard one woman passenger remark to another,
Look, Mavis, now they're even dragging religion into Christmas.
And just to show what a bad year it's been, Brian Hughes of Ipswich claims to have heard this on Radio 4 one morning in August.
There will be no sun today because of an industrial dispute.
It's been a year of increased costs all round, although everyone deals with this in their different ways. And an anonymous listener reports what her local postmistress said when she was asked when the new postal charges would be introduced.
We ain't heard nothing yet, but it won't make any difference. We shall carry on selling our stamps at the old price.
Much the same course seems to have been adopted by British Rail Catering when VAT went up to 15% in the summer. Mr. J. Osborne of Canterbury reports seeing this scribbled under a list of British Rail sandwich prices.
No increase in prices due to VAT while existing stocks last.
Now back to the quiz and some more sayings of the year for the panel to identify Arthur Marshall. Of whom was it said this year and on what occasion?
He'll be a riot at your friend's wedding.
Good Lord.
A critical notice.
He'll be a riot at your friend's wedding.
Yes. As opposed to the place where he was. Peter.
Oh, it's a critical review of our Bruce.
It is.
Having his big night on Broadway, and this bloke obviously found him ideal for weddings and not for Broadway. I got married on Broadway, which may tell you something about nothing at all. But
did you really?
Yes.
On
but it wasn't reviewed.
By Bruce, of course, we are referring to this gentleman.
'Cause I only wanna be a song and dance man and have an audience beg for more.
Peter gets Arthur's marks, and then we move on. We go on to Sue McGregor. Listen to this rather noisy recording, Sue. Where does it come from? Why did it gain in relevance?
If the core is exposed, for whatever reason, the fuel heats beyond core heat tolerance in a matter of minutes. Nothing can stop it. And it melts right down through the bottom of the plant. But of course, as soon as it hits groundwater, it blasts into the atmosphere and sends out clouds of radioactivity. The number of people killed would depend on which way the wind is blowing. Render an area the size of Pennsylvania permanently uninhabitable.
He sounds so cheerful, doesn't he? If the core is exposed...
Pennsylvania was mentioned. Do you know what it's from?
It's either the real thing or it's a movie, because they happened quite close together, didn't they, this year? The real thing was 3 Mile Island. But this was a movie called what the Americans call the China Syndrome.
Yes, and that line about Pennsylvania proved to be prophetic, because obviously the film was made a little
Weren't
while
they
ago.
clever? Yeah.
And 3 Mile Island is indeed in or near Harrisburg in Pennsylvania. Well done. John Mortimer, what were the circumstances which gave rise to this remark?
My lord, we are a number of noughts apart.
Oh, well, that's somebody buying something.
No. Negotiating, perhaps.
Negotiating to buy
And the
something.
my lord is a sort of thing which I'm sure you're used to saying, isn't it?
Oh, yes, that's somebody trying to settle something. That's some unfortunate barrister telling a judge that he hasn't... And I know who it is, Bianca Jagger.
Yes, yes. Do you know the name of the counsel, in fact?
Robert
Johnson. Yes, Robert Johnson QC.
Yes.
This was when Bianca Jagger was trying to have her divorce proceedings against Mick Jagger heard in California.
That's right, where they're a little bit more generous with the alimony.
And Lord Justice Ormerod commented that if the two parties could only agree upon a financial settlement, the divorce could go ahead without delay. Peter Cook, this remark became more widely known in a crisper form. What was the crisper form and who said it?
Please don't run down your own country by talking about mounting chaos. I do not feel there is mounting chaos.
This is a man under stress. It isn't Peter J. sat in Washington, is it?
Well,
it is Peter J. sat in Washington. Or somebody very like it.
Well, somebody not a million miles from Peter J. who had been that way.
Oh.
The same way as Peter J.
A relative of Peter J. indeed.
It is Lucky Jim, isn't it? It's old Jim Callahan, yes. I'd forgotten that he didn't notice the mounting chaos.
Yes. what was the phrase?
He was very astute. What was his actual phrase? Oh, dear, you have to get in that dreadful voice. He said, I've been away for a while and it's been very nice.
Do you remember?
No, I don't actually remember the phrase.
Crisis, what crisis was the phrase which was pinned onto him. I'm not quite sure whether he actually said it in those words. On his return from a sunny summit in Guadeloupe at the beginning of January, while we at home were having our worst winter for 15 years, plus various industrial disturbances. Now to some sayings which have been quoted during the year and in some cases misquoted, though they originated in earlier years. Arthur Marshall, during the Thorpe trial, Mr. Thorpe's counsel, George Carman QC, said this. Was he quoting or misquoting?
I end by saying, in the words of the Bible, let this prosecution fold up its tent and quietly creep away.
I think it's a slight misquote. I don't think it was a prosecution that folded up its tent and quietly crept away.
Anybody?
I thought the prosecution should creep up its tent and quietly fold away, is what the Bible said, wasn't it?
Steal away, is it?
Steal away.
It's more the attribution than the quotation, actually.
Not so much the Bible as...
As somebody else.
What's close to the Bible?
A poet.
A poet, yes.
Tennyson?
No, not Tennyson.
Byron?
Not Byron.
Longfellow?
Milton?
Yes, it was Longfellow. Well done, Arthur, yes. Words taken not from the Bible, but from Longfellow's poem, The Day is Done, which Ronnie has in a rather more accurate form, I think.
And the night shall be filled with music, and the cares that infest the day shall fold their tents like the Arabs and as silently steal away.
Right, Arthur, you got it in the end. No marks to George Carman, QC, who got it wrong. Sue McGregor, what may or may not have been the most wildly inaccurate quote of the year, certainly caused the most ructions. If the remark was made at all, The Guardian suggested it could have been...
I hate those Irish jigs.
Now, what might it have been? By whom might it have been spoken?
Was that the lady who was meant to be collecting money for Covent Garden, but in fact got a lot of backs up in the United States of America?
Yes.
Princess Margaret.
Yes.
And some people thought that she'd said, I hate those Irish pigs.
Yes. A storm in October when a Chicago gossip columnist who had talked to somebody who had sat near the mayor of Chicago, who had sat across the table from it. It's all very... But you've got the gist of it, Sue. John Mortimer, somebody quoted this year. Who wrote it? Who quoted it?
So, when the world is asleep and there seems no hope of her waking out of some long, bad dream that makes her mutter and moan, suddenly all men rise to the noise of fetters breaking, and everyone smiles at his neighbor and tells him his soul is his own.
Absolutely no idea.
No idea. Well,
who could have written it?
Who could have written? Well, on this programme we say
It could be Kipling.
It could be Kipling,
Yes.
and indeed it was Kipling.
Yes.
And now, who would quote
But who would have quoted it?
Who might have felt that there was cause for saying that fetters had been broken this year by a mighty achievement that this person had accomplished?
Conservative person.
It was a conservative person.
Female conservative person.
No, she quotes St. Francis of Assisi, that one.
Yeah. Well, John Mortimer rules her out. What were you saying, Sue?
No, I was wrong. I thought it might be Mrs. Thatcher. But
is it to do with South Africa?
But you were wrong, were you?
No, she's right.
It was Margaret Thatcher, yes. Quoting Rudyard Kipling, a poem called The Dawn Wind, in a speech in Scotland during the election campaign, and a journalist wrote, who'd been covering the speech, that he didn't know where this came from, and it is reported that Mrs. Thatcher woke up at 3 o'clock in the night and made a note to tell him and gave him a note saying where it had come from. Isn't that wonderful?
Very moving.
Oh, lovely. Bless her.
Sure you will, Arthur, one day. Finally, Peter Cook. This was quoted because the person who said it, unfortunately, died this year after a long and humorous career. It was originally the caption to a cartoon.
I've got Bright's disease, and he's got mine.
That is S.J. Perelman.
Yes.
Straightforward answer.
Yes, who died in October, sadly missed. Now then, as we draw to a close, I wonder, are there any sayings from the year of 1979 that we've missed out? I wonder, do you have a remark from the year that you treasure, Sue McGregor?
Well, yes, I came across this looking back through old editions of the papers. Do you remember Mandy Rice Davis?
No?
No?
You're not catching me on that one.
He wouldn't, would he?
Yes, he would say that, wouldn't he? Yes. Well, she said in, I think it was November this year, when she was over here on a visit, I'm the Mary Poppins of Israel. And that I thought was rather nice. I don't know what she meant by it, but it sounded nice.
But she's now come to take up residence again in this country. Arthur, what have you culled
Well,
from
round
the
about June, I think it was, a provincial newspaper, there was a report about a student complaining about the quality of the sex education that he had had when he was at school. And he said, the parson came to school and told us not to do it. The doctor came to school and told us how not to do it. And then the headmaster came and told us where not to do it. And there was another rather jolly one. A firm of sanitary equipment manufacturers were holding a sort of street survey. They constructed bidets, and they were pretty sure the British public didn't all of them know what a bidet was. So they sent people into the street to stop people and ask, and some said a bidet was this, and some said a bidet was that. And they got to a very haughty middle-aged man who drew himself up and said, I refuse to answer, I am Church of England.
John Mortimer, do you have a favourite saying of the year?
Well, I have a saying which has haunted me throughout the year. I was sitting minding my own business having lunch, and a naval-looking gentleman with a sort of naval bluish eye and a bristling beard came and sat next to me. And there was a long silence. He said, what do you do to your female crew if you hit a force 10 gale in the channel and your boat's going up? So I said, I don't know. What do you do with your female crew? He said, double your fist, hit her on the chin and stun her. So I said, why? He said, well, she's much less likely to slide overboard if you do that. He said, well, I stunned my female crew last week. When she came to, she said, shall I put up a very light? And I said to her, no, well, don't be a bloody fool, make a cup of tea. And so I said to him, well, amazed at this conversation, I said, isn't your sport of yachting very dangerous? And he said, no, not dangerous at all, provided you can't swim. He said, if you swim, you immediately try and get ashore and drown. He said, but I can't swim, so I cling to the wreckage. And a helicopter always comes for me. Cling to the wreckage. And I thought to myself, that's my motto for 1980, cling to the wreckage.
And Peter Cook, what have you got from this year?
Oh, I'd like to plug Sir James Goldsmith. And his new magazine Now. He pays extremely good wages, and he rightly said, I think, if you pay peanuts, you get monkeys. And if you don't give the monkeys, work for Now. But no, it's generally put up the rate for freelance journalists, and that is extremely good.
It is indeed to be applauded. Ronald Fletcher, have you got something from this year?
Yes, a nice bit of dialogue from way back in June. President Carter said, "If Teddy Kennedy runs against me, I'll whip his ass." And Kennedy replied, "I've always felt that the White House would stand behind me, but I didn't realize how close they intended to be."
Nigel, can I add one quote, which I forgot in my Mandy Rice Davis moment a few moments ago, from the Prime Minister, which is a very nice one, I think. She said in July this year, "One's advisors are not always right, and I often tell them so."
Right, those are your favourite quotations from the year, but can I also have your nominations, please, for the most over-quoted person of 1979, by which I mean the person perhaps you'd like to hear less of or nothing at all from in 1980. Peter Cook, who would you nominate?
Well, I think one of our fundamental freedoms is, or should be, the ability to get through a year without hearing continuously from Lord Denning and his interesting judgments. And his quotes are always very good. It's the accent which gets me, which is, "Be ye whoever ye be not so mighty that ye be able to ye be," and on it goes. And I think he's been quoted a lot, and a little less.
A quiet year in 1980. John Mortimer, who would you nominate?
Yes, I'd have a bit of judicial silence. I think people should be given 15 years and life imprisonment without any sort of jokes or morals pointed. There was a judge recently, not quite so recently, but fairly recently, who was sentencing two men whom he'd found in an attitude of unusual friendliness under Waterloo Bridge. And instead of just sentencing them like anybody else might, he said, "You two men," he said, "have done a most disgusting and immoral and depraved act, a terrible act," he said. "And what makes it so much worse, you chose to do it under one of the most beautiful bridges in the world." So I think we could have less of that in the new year.
All right, so it's a general sort of condemnation of people like that, John, thank you. Sue McGregor, would you nominate an over-quoted person this year?
I think in general, football managers, but in particular, the one who has finally and reluctantly come to the conclusion that he's destined never to become the manager of England, and that is Brian Clough.
Yes. You don't want to hear from him in 1980,
no
all right?
More Cloughy.
No more Cloughy. Arthur Marshall, a nomination, please.
Mine would have to be dear Barbara Cartland. You can hardly move without bumping into her. I once, in a review of one of her books, called her the animated meringue. And I must say she was awfully sweet and wrote me a letter of thanks.
Aren't the plans for Barbara Cartland to manage Notts Forest? Midfield motivation and vitamins?
Well, there we are. At the end of the quiz, I can tell you that, Peter Cook has 10, but Sue McGregor has pipped him by 1 mark, so she's the winner. Well done, Sue McGregor. We'll be back with another series of quote-unquote in 1980, so if you have any favourite quotations, graffiti, eavesdroppings or foot-in-mouth that you'd like to share, then write to me, Nigel Rees, quote-unquote, BBC, Broadcasting House, London W1A 4WW. And we'll look forward to hearing from you. Meanwhile, we'll leave you with a piece of graffiti from the year gone by, as reported to us by A.S. Lloyd of Frampton Cotterell, Bristol. It said,
"Keep the boat people out."
And someone had added underneath,
"Sink the Irish ferry."
Goodbye.
Taking part in quote-unquote this week were Peter Cook, Sue McGregor, Arthur Marshall and John Mortimer. The quotations were read by me, Ronald Fletcher. The programme was devised and introduced by Nigel Rees and produced by Geoffrey Perkins.